Hello everyone, thank you for joining me today. This is going to be a video in regards to radiation risk communication, principle, perception, policy, and public trust. So this is a huge topic of something that is really important to kind of engage with the public, fear, a lot of different things, because there's a new administration in the government and they're really pushing for nuclear power, and of course with nuclear power come nuclear fear, and how do we as physicists, nuclear engineers, health physics, how do we reach out to these people and educate them, because there's a lot of misconceptions. So this video is going to be uploaded on YouTube. This is for my class, my seminar classes is a project. But I'm gonna upload it on YouTube because it's easier to submit and upload my presentation that way, so that I don't need to attach a huge file to Canvas. And also, it also could help the public. If you're looking at my channel and you're not my professor, then welcome. This is actually also for you, so that maybe you could learn something about the nuclear world and whatnot. So let's head forward. So let me introduce myself first. My name is David. I am a health physics major, doing my master's in health physics at Oregon State University, and this is hence where this presentation is going to go to. But I hope you guys kind of enjoy this presentation if you're not part of the university. We will explore a complex and vital topic of radiation risk communication. Radiation in a double-edged sword. So radiation is a double-edged sword in the public eye, essential for medical, energy, and industrial, but also source of fear. In this presentation, I will walk you through key principles and challenges in communication about radiation risk, especially during emergency. We'll touch on how people perceive risk, review real-world case studies like Chernobyl's and Fukushima, and discuss effective and ethical strategies of building public trust. And to go forward, this is going to be a brief overview because I could spend all day talking about this topic, especially like even one slide of this. So this is a 1-credit class that I'm taking, and I'm just going to do a brief summary and gloss over a lot of things here, just to make this video shorter, so it doesn't go in like 2-3 hours range. So let's begin with the basic, right? Risk communication is not just about relying data, it's about closing the gap between the expert who know what the public believe, who knows, and what public believes. So sorry, it is closing the gap between the knowledge of what the expert knows and what the public would know. So with nuclear power, or everything we talk about nuclear, there's this huge gap between what the health professionals, like in the nuclear health field, we kind of know medical physics, health physics would know, versus what the public would know. So they have these really basic and oftentimes wrong perception of what nuclear is, and that's where all the irrational and unfounded fear comes from. Researcher like Sandman introduced model to explain this gaps, right? And if you guys have the time to read any of Sandman's finding or Covello, they're really going to talk about like the gap between this kind of beliefs and what the public kind of believe versus what people kind of believe. But if you guys talk a lot about with people in the public, you'll actually know quite a bit, especially with you put in like a new nuclear power plant, there'll be huge protests because they think it will explode and blow up into a nuclear weapon. That's not kind of how it works. Most nuclear power plant malfunction or explosion is hydrogen explosion is not a nuclear explosion like what you would see in an atomic bomb, right? And we'll talk about that more in Chernobyl and Fukushima and get to really understand what it is there. One current concept is there is a risk equal hazard, so plus outage, right? So there's a risk equal to hazard, outrage, so like there's there might be an outage to the power, and then there might be a hazard risk as well. In other words, people emotion response often drive their perception of danger more than the facts, the technical facts. Model like the CDC crisis and emergency risk communication, which is the CERC, which we'll talk more about that, help us understand how to adapt our communication strategy across different phase of an emergency, right? So the CERC is down here, and there's other model like the mental model as well, where it really it kind of focus on how the expert would look at what the public already know and try to build off on that. And CERC model is what is currently being used in a lot of U.S. and international foreign relations, nuclear public relations. So that's what they use today, and that's kind of what the true what's the word for it? That's the proven way that they use for now. So that's what they're using. So the goal is to build understanding, not just to deliver facts, not just to throw facts out there because people are just gonna lose attention. Let's go on. So I have my notes here so that I wrote a script as well, and I'll be going in and out of script so that I don't kind of mess up too much. Hence why I'm looking through both screens. Okay, let's go back to the presentation. Now let's talk about how people actually perceive risk. According to Paul Solvik and others, we often use mental shortcuts called heuristic to judge danger. For radiation, certain outrage factor make people more fearful, like the fact that invisible, involuntary, and often associated with cancer, like these radiation, these magical particle in the air that you can't see. How do they that's caused a lot of fear, and there's a lot of lack of knowledge being taught in school of what radiation really is. So it just kind of add on to that fear of radiation. Emotional trigger can override rational thinking. Understanding these psychological patterns help us craft message and resonate without being manipulative, right? So there has to be, so us as it being in the nuclear physics or radiation physics field, we have kind of a bias as well to want more nuclear, and we kind of know the risk associated with it, but the public really doesn't, and they kind of overhype the risk. A lot of them don't even know what radiation is, and so we need to address the elephant in the room. So the China syndrome, which is the picture, I'm pointing to my screen, you guys can't see it, but the China syndrome. This is the movie that came out a few days before or after the incident of the 3 Mile Islands. In that kind of scenario, in the 3 Mile Island, no one died. It's really well contained, but it caused a lot of public fear because of this movie. And to just kind of summarize this movie, it's just kind of the concept where it's a story where the nuclear power plant went on a meltdown, and it kind of the nuclear isotope melt its way to China, right? It goes to another, this kind of the China syndrome. It melts its way, and it create this huge public risk, and it caused this massive fear in the public at that time. So this is kind of the movie that really a lot of health physicists and nuclear engineers would kind of look at, because that's what caused a lot of fear in the public. A lot of the things being shown there is completely wrong. Um, how the science work, how things work is completely wrong, but it's a movie, it's fictional, right? But people still have this giant fear because of it, because people are not rational beings. So the technical versus public risk assessment. So there's a difference between like technical, which is factual risk, and what the public perceive the risk to be. This is a huge gap, and this is a lot more in the nuclear world than it would be in the public, in other sectors, right? Um, so experts quantify radiation risk using dose metric like millisieverts and dose, response model, often based on reports like the Bear 5, I'm sorry, 7, the Bear 5, 7, but for public number means little without context, right? So like if you talk to someone like, hey, yo, this is gray, I'm getting exposed to 2 grays, or 5 microsieverts, or this is the dose you're getting. A lot of it just goes in the ear, out of there, just kind of looking at you like, what does that actually mean, right? Like it's an example of like maybe telling an American what the temperature is in Celsius, and they're just looking at you like, what is that? Or you go to the UK and you tell them the temperature in Fahrenheit. So there's that kind of conception there that like they just don't really know what to do with the number. The gap between technical and perceived risk is one of the biggest communication challenge in the nuclear field. For example, telling someone they receive 1 millisievert from a CAT scan, a CT scan, may not ease anxiety unless you compare it to like natural background radiation or flying on a plane, right? Translating risk into relatable terms is critical, right? And I think there's this kind of concept where the public doesn't realize how much radiation they're exposed to daily from the natural background radiation, like from the sun, from the radon in the ground, or in your environment. If you go in for a chest x-ray, you're getting hit with a lot of radiation. If you go to a dentist, you get like x-ray in your teeth, right? That's a huge hit of radiation as well. The getting your breast examined, right? Like you're gonna need to do that, and that is a huge dose of radiation as well. So I think a lot of publics don't understand how much radiation they're getting in versus how much the radiation is actually being given off from a nuclear power plant. Is just really low, comparatively, right? So there's this huge misunderstanding of what radiation is, for sure. So let's talk about Chernobyl. This is the kind of the biggest elephant in the room. This is kind of the biggest incident when it comes to nuclear power. This is the big hurdle that us all in the nuclear field have to address with the public, and we'll probably fail doing that because there's so much fear in it. So let's go through it. So Chernobyl disaster in 1986 is a cautionary tale of poor communication. The Soviet Union intentionally kept the accident secret, leading to public panic and international distrust. Many people were exposed simply because they didn't know to stay indoors. This lack of transparency caused long-term stigma and misinformation. The key lessons here is the radiation emergency. Silence breeds fear. Effective communication must be timely, honest, and respectful of uncertainty. And the HBO show called Chernobyl did a very good job of kind of highlighting the pride and the ego that the USSR, the Soviet had. They would silence any type of bad information. They're very prideful nation, and a lot of death could have been prevented if they came out clean with what happened at that time. I'm gonna go through a little bit. So Chernobyl isn't like a nuclear explosion that you would think from a nuclear bomb. This Chernobyl, Fukushima, most nuclear power plant, you're not gonna get those type of explosion that you would get from a nuclear bomb. So it's not the same thing. So what really happened is there's two explosions. There's a steam explosion first. So the superheated water turbine. So it starts from a test on the reactor 4. There's 4 reactors at the Chernobyl power plant in Ukraine, and they were doing a test where what happened if they lose power to cool the system in the power plant, right? If let's say that at that time it was during the Cold War, so what happened if the American attack and bomb them and they lose power? How do they keep the water cool? So they intentionally shut down the water system to begin with, and I think the concept was that the momentum in the turbine, since it's so big, it would just continue to turn until the backup system kind of kicked in and cool the system. And because of horrible communication, inexperienced engineers, and of course they have these graphites control rod that actually became more reactive when everything kind of happened. Making this story short, the water come into they shut down the power to the turbine. The temperature of the core went really high, so they just flushed the system, and then they set in the control rod, which has graphite tip, and that they do that to kind of save money. That created these huge steam explosion, and the steam interact with the heat and the core and everything. It created a lot of hydrogen. So first there's huge steam explosion that blow off the roof to the reactor containment. Then the water rushed in, creating another hydrogen explosion, right? The hydrogen, the heat, and the water, the heat and the water and the hydrogen and all the interaction create a lot of hydrogen, right? The hydrogen fuel. Hydrogen is extremely flammable, so it exploded and launched all these radioactive isotope into the air, kind of more like a dirty bomb than it would be a nuclear explosion, like let's say an atomic bomb in Japan, like say like in Nagasaki or something like that, right? So Fukushima, right? So another big thing in Fukushima. This happened in Japan in 2021. I was in high school when it was happening. Fun fact: I went to a competition for my high school for engineering. So I was an aspiring engineer, young engineer at that time. And one of the big thing that we had to solve that they gave us as a high school student was to build a robot to go into this Fukushima incident, and kind of retrieve isotope in the radiation. Of course, we were in high school, we didn't account for the EMP wave or anything. We create like a launcher to launch the radioisotope away. So we got first place. Anyways, off topic. So in contrast, in 2021, 2011, Fukushima incident in Japan occurred in an era of digital media and global scrutiny. While they were still delayed and missteps, communication was frequent, and international agency like WHO and ICRP play important role. Social media, however, introduced new layer of complexity. Misinformation spread really quickly. This case teaches us the importance of coordinating messaging, empathy, and the challenges of communication enveloping scientific information under pressure. So a lot of things now with the phone, social media, right? Like misinformation spread really fast, faster than wildfire, right? So It created a lot of mass fear and panic. A lot of in Fukushima, in the area in that town, there was a huge mass panic in that area, and it just all caused some misinformation from the social media. Some people actually commit suicide, and that was because of the fear of what they're gonna get from this type of radiation, which in fact the radiation was actually quite contained. There's really no death from this kind of from the radiation itself, from this exposure at all. The exposure was really low and it was well contained. What actually happened in this, and I'll go through a brief thing on it. There was a huge earthquake which created a huge tsunami that goes into the that wash over the plant. It overwhelmed the seawall. It goes and flood the power, so they lost power to the plant, like with kind of the Chernobyl incident, right? And the turbine kind of shut down, and then it kind of caused a hydrogen explosion again, and it kind of launched a bunch of radioactive isotope, everywhere. So crisis messaging in practice. So CDC's CERC. So the CDC uses CERC, and we talked about that a few slides ago, right? Which is a phrase, like what they use to kind of communicate to the public is the true way that they use right now. A lot of agency uses it, and the element of the strong crisis messaging is be first, to kind of get to be before all the misinformation. Be right, be credible, express empathy, promote action, and show respect. So that's kind of the tenets in it. So one second. Messaging must be simple, frequent, and from a trusted source. During our course, we practice writing a sample press release and preparing a skill that can be a real difference in public responses, right? So earthquake in Fukushima, Daiichi, early communication, but improve over time. Okay, yep. So misinformation and media influence. After Fukushima, this becomes such a big thing. Misinformation during COVID, a lot of misinformation is coming from all sides, really. And you have people who genuinely think they are experts, they're spreading misinformation, or there are people who are just trolling and creating chaos. And that's just how people are, okay? In today's world, misinformation can go viral faster than the facts. Radiation fear, and particularly vulnerable to this because of the scientific complexity and emotional weight. Social media often frame events in sensational ways, right? It's all about getting clicks and views, fueling panics. The best defense is proactive communication, fact-checking in real time, partnering with influencer and local leader, and educating the public before crises occur. It's about building credibility in the audience, right? So I think the common saying is that lies or misinformation travel the world 3 times before facts actually the truth actually circled the world once, right? Or even left the door. So yep. So that's kind of important for us in the health physics. So the health physics field is what is important to us, how we communicate with the public. This is kind of part of what we kind of study as well. So ethics issue in public communications. So ethics play a huge role, right? So a lot of people kind of see us scientists as this like people in masses, and the media doesn't kind of, oh yeah, my face is blocking her face, which makes it even more ominous, right? So people kind of view scientists as these like lab people who are wearing these masks, and they are part of these secretive organizations, and the media doesn't kind of help it. Like if you play the game like Resident Evil, right? The Umbrella Corporation, where you have these corporate scientists, greedy, they don't care about human life, and so here come the ethics, right? So in fact, ethics play a major role in how we communicate radiation risk. Should we tell the public everything? But even if it causes fear, what if the data is uncertain? According to the NCRP and the IAEA guideline, transparency, honesty, and respects for autonomy are key, right? We must acknowledge uncertainty while still providing actionable guidance. Ethical risk communication build long-term trust even when answers aren't clear. Right. So, communicating with vulnerable populations. Right. Excuse my face. I seem to be blocking some of the slides. Different groups have different risks, concerns, and needs. Not everyone receive or interpret message in the same way. Children, pregnant women, non-native speaker, and indigenous community have significant concerns and communication needs that are different than maybe the general population. For example, pediatric radiation exposure must be explained in age-appropriate term, right? So health physics, radiation, like radiation kind of affect the young more than the old because radiation damaged your DNA, right? Ionizing radiation is what, let's be clear, and when you're young, you're still growing, you have a lot of stem cells which need to multiply and divide, and all these things and all these error in the DNA can cause a lot of problems versus people who are older in age. They don't have a lot of stem cells anymore. They're not growing anymore. They're not replicating cells at the same pace as people who are younger. So DNA, so radiation doesn't affect them as much. In dosage, culture, competence, and community engagement are essential to avoiding marginalization and misinformation. Tailored messaging ensures no one is left behind in an emergencies. Right. So conclusion, right, and takeaway. Right. To wrap this up, radiation risk communication is a dedicated balance of science, psychological, and ethics. We must translate technical data into meaningful messages, respond quickly and credible during crisis, and maintaining transparency even under uncertainty. Above all, we must listen. Trust is the foundation of effective risk communication, and trust is earned not just with facts, but with empathy and respect. Okay, thank you. This concludes my presentation, right? I hope you guys can take away that communication is a huge things in the radiation field. There's this huge gap between public fear and actual, like, credible information. This is a huge challenge in radiation field, nuclear field, for us professionals in this type of field. And hopefully, if you're not in the nuclear field and you listen to this video, it kind of help you understand and quell some of the fear. If you have any question, be sure to comment below, because this is going to be uploaded to YouTube. This is not just for, here's the references, by the way. So let me put the references up first. But the fear of this and the challenges. I lost my train of thought. But thank you for joining me today. Thank you for listening. This is for my presentation at Oregon State University. This is for a master's in health physics, which is, a lot of people, if I tell health physics, tend to understand, think of it as nuclear physics with a more emphasis in healthcare and radiation protection, right? Thank you. Bye bye.